The discount grocery store where you buy your eggs and your roasted seaweed snacks and, let's be honest, your wine. That store has a beauty aisle. You've walked past it 100 times. Pink and gold packaging, stacked 4 shelves high, gone by Sunday. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've had the thought and dismissed it in the same breath. That's probably fine for what it is. Cheap is cheap. I want you to sit with how wrong that instinct is, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand that one of the most disciplined, well-formulated skincare operations selling to Western women over 45 is hiding inside a German discount grocer's middle aisle, wearing a brand name most people can't even pronounce correctly. It's called Lacura. It belongs to Aldi. And I'm saving the most shocking find for last, not because it's the cheapest, but because of who actually owns it. And that ownership detail is going to recontextualize almost everything I've said by the time we get there. I've spent my career on the other side of this industry, sitting in formulation meetings in Seoul, reading INSEE lists the way other people read restaurant menus, watching a jar go from a chemist's bench to a counter with a 4-figure price tag, and trying to figure out every single time where the money actually went. And here is the one thing I need you to carry through this entire video, because it explains every single item on this list. You are paying for 2 completely separate products when you buy a Sephora bestseller. You're paying for the formula. And you're paying for the theatre, the glass, the campaign, the celebrity dermatologist on retainer, the flagship rent on Fifth Avenue. Those 2 things have almost nothing to do with each other. In Korea, where I trained, that split is almost embarrassingly visible because Korean regulation forces full ingredient disclosure in descending concentration order. You learn to read a label like a recipe, not a story. Once you can do that, the theatre stops fooling you. So hold that thread. Formula. Theatre. They are not the same purchase, and tonight we're going shelf by shelf to prove it. Let's start with something almost nobody on this side of the Atlantic has ever heard of, and that's exactly the point. Lacura's Healthy Glow Tonic is the UK range's quiet answer to Pixie's Glow Tonic, the one with the pink bottle that became a cult object years ago and now sits at a premium price point in Sephora's bestseller wall. Aldi's version is built around the same logic: aloe vera, ginseng, and a 5% glycolic acid concentration doing the actual exfoliating work. Here's why a supermarket toner earns a spot on a list built to embarrass Sephora. Glycolic acid is glycolic acid. It doesn't know what bottle it's in. The percentage is what does the work, and Aldi prints it on the label instead of hiding behind a marketing name like Glow Complex. That's the formula winning over the theatre, item 1. Number 2. And this is where the ownership thread starts paying off early. Let's talk about CeraVe, because you cannot talk about drugstore skincare without it. And you cannot talk about CeraVe honestly without saying out loud that it has not been an independent dermatology brand for almost a decade. L'Oreal bought it in 2017 for $1.3 billion, alongside 2 smaller brands, in a single transaction. I'm not telling you that to scare you off CeraVe. The ceramide and cholesterol ratio in that moisturizing cream is genuinely well engineered, and L'Oreal's money has, if anything, made distribution better. I'm telling you because the humble drugstore brand image CeraVe still trades on is technically marketing too. It's owned by the same conglomerate that owns Lancôme. Keep that in your pocket. We're coming back to L'Oreal later, and it's going to connect to something you don't expect. Number 3 takes us back to Lacura, and this one is almost cheeky. The Miracle Cream, reintroduced as a special buy after customer demand brought it back from discontinuation, is openly, unapologetically modelled on Elizabeth Arden's 8-Hour Cream, the multi-purpose balm that's been a cult product since the 1930s and still retails at a serious markup for what is, structurally, a simple, occlusive balm. Why does a multi-purpose balm deserve its own slot on this list? Because the entire premise of an 8-hour cream-style product is mechanical, not magical. Petrolatum or a similar occlusive sealing moisture in full stop. There is no proprietary molecule hiding in there that justifies a 10 times markup. Aldi simply built the same mechanism and skipped the heritage tax. 4. Drunk elephant. If you've spent any time in the Sephora skincare aisle in the last 5 years, you know the bottles. Bright, clean, allergen-free marketing splashed across everything. What a lot of loyal customers don't know is that Drunk Elephant was acquired by Shiseido in 2019 for $845 million. Shiseido, a Japanese beauty conglomerate that also owns NARS and Clé de Peau Beauté. So the indie founder energy that built the brand's loyalty in the first place is now funding quarterly earnings calls in Tokyo. Lacura's equivalent move sits in its vitamin C and niacinamide serums in the Skin Science range, actives at meaningful listed percentages, sold without a single influencer unboxing video required to justify the price. The reframe here isn't Drunk Elephant is bad, it's that you were never just buying a serum. You were quietly subsidizing an acquisition. 5. And I want to slow down here because this is where the Korean lens earns its keep instead of just decorating the script. Western skincare marketing loves the word hyaluronic acid printed once, big, on the front of a jar. As if that single phrase does all the explaining. Korean formulation culture moved past that years ago. Multi-molecular weight hyaluronic acid, several sizes blended together, became standard practice because different molecular weights penetrate to different depths of the skin and do genuinely different jobs. That's not a gimmick, it's basic delivery science, and it's been mainstream in Korean serums for the better part of a decade. Aldi's HA5 Plus range builds on exactly that principle. 5 hyaluronic acid types in one formula, an approach that used to be the kind of detail you'd only find if you were importing from Seoul or Tokyo. Now it's sitting next to the milk in a grocery store. That's not Aldi being clever. That's Aldi simply catching up to where Korean formulation already was, and being honest enough to print the technique on the bottle instead of selling you a vague promise. 6. Tatcha, the Japanese ritual branding, the rice water cleansers, the soft focus campaign photography. It's beautiful, and I understand the appeal completely. But Tatcha was bought by Unilever in 2019 for roughly $500 million. Unilever, the same parent that owns Dove and at the time owned Schmidt's Naturals, and a long list of mass brands you'd never associate with a $65 moisturizer. None of that makes Tatcha's formulas bad. It does mean the small Japanese-inspired beauty house framing is doing a lot of emotional work that the cap table doesn't support. Lacura's rice bran oil and silk protein night cream from the Extracts from Nature line leans on genuinely similar raw materials. Rice bran, a real source of vitamin E and antioxidant compounds, silk proteins for a smoothing finish, at a fraction of the shelf price with none of the ritual photography. Same ingredients, no incense. 7. And here's where I want you to lean in, because this is a real formulation detail, not a vibe. Lacura's Q10 Renew Day Cream includes SPF 20 alongside coenzyme Q10 and provitamin B5. I want to be precise here because sunscreen is not a place for hand-waving. SPF 20 is a real meaningful level of daily protection against UVB. It is not the SPF 30 plus you'd want for direct extended sun exposure, and if you're spending real time outdoors, you should layer a dedicated higher SPF sunscreen rather than relying on this alone. But for an everyday moisturizer doing double duty under makeup, having any broad spectrum SPF baked in at all at a drugstore price with an antioxidant pairing that actually makes physiological sense is more than most prestige day creams in this price tier bother to include. A lot of $50 glow creams skip SPF entirely and expect you to layer a separate sunscreen on top, which, to be fair, is often the technically better approach. But Aldi, giving you both functions honestly labelled at a fraction of the cost, earns this slot on formulation grounds, not on marketing ones. 8. And here is the one I promised you. The most shocking name on this list, and it's not a Sephora dupe at all. It's bigger than that. It's Aldi itself. Here's the thing almost nobody talks about. Aldi is not a public company answering to shareholders demanding quarterly growth. It is, and has been since the 1960s, privately held by the Albrecht family, split into two branches, Aldi Nord and Aldi Süd, each controlled through private family foundations and trusts that don't trade on any stock exchange and don't owe anyone a glossy earnings call. Aldi Süd is the branch that runs the stores you actually shop at, the UK, the US, Ireland, Australia. No public shareholders. No quarterly pressure to juice margins with a flagship store on Madison Avenue or a 9-figure celebrity contract. That structure is the actual engine behind everything you just heard. It's not that Aldi found some secret cheap ingredient supplier. It's that the company answering to nobody but a private family foundation simply doesn't need to fund the theatre. No glass jar. No influencer trip to Capri. No quarterly earnings call to keep happy. Every pound, every dollar goes into the thing you're actually putting on your face because there's no shareholder demanding it go anywhere else. Compare that to L'Oreal, Unilever, Shiseido, Puig, every single conglomerate we named tonight, publicly traded, answering to investors who reward marketing spend because marketing spend is what moves stock price quarter to quarter. Aldi answers to nobody but a family that's been quietly avoiding the spotlight for 60 years. The cheap store turned out to be the disciplined one. So here's the line I want you to keep, because it's the whole video in one sentence. Your skin has never once cared who funded the commercial. It only ever wanted the formula. Now, practically, how do you actually use any of this? First habit, stop reading the front of the bottle and start reading the back. The marketing word is on the front. The truth is on the back. In descending order of concentration, exactly the way Korean labeling culture trained an entire generation of skincare shoppers to expect. If an active ingredient is buried 6 lines down the list, it is decorative, not functional, no matter what the front panel claims. Second, layer thin to thick every time, regardless of price point. Toner, then serum, then cream, then SPF in the morning. That order matters more than which brand made any individual step. Third, when you're trying something new with an active percentage on it, a glycolic toner, a vitamin C serum, a retinol cream, patch test on your inner arm for a few days first. The same caution you'd extend to a $40 product. Cheap doesn't mean gentle, and expensive doesn't mean safe. Fourth, and this is the small Korean technique worth stealing regardless of what's in the jar. Pat your serums and creams in with your fingertips instead of rubbing them across your face. Rubbing drags the skin and creates friction your 45+ skin barrier doesn't need. Patting lets the product absorb and respects the skin you're trying to protect. It costs nothing, and it works with a $5 cream exactly as well as a $500 one. Now the honest part? Because I'd rather you trust me than agree with me. Aldi special buys rotate. Some of what I named tonight is permanent range. Some comes and goes seasonally, and availability genuinely differs between the UK, the US, and Australia, because Lacura is formulated and stocked slightly differently in each market. Treat this video as a map of what to look for on a shelf, not a guaranteed shopping list you can screenshot and walk in expecting verbatim. If a product isn't there this week, it may be back next month, or it may have a slightly reformulated sibling under a similar name. And on the SPF point specifically, I'll say it again because it matters too much to bury in a list. A daily moisturizer with SPF 20 is a wonderful baseline habit, but it is not a substitute for a dedicated, higher SPF sunscreen if you're spending real time outdoors. Don't let a fun countdown talk you into being casual about sun protection. That one's not negotiable. Here's the bigger thing I want you to leave with, because 8 products were never really the point. The entire premium beauty industry has spent the last decade consolidating into the hands of about 5 or 6 public conglomerates: L'Oreal, Unilever, Shiseido, Estée Lauder, Puig, buying up the indie darlings the moment they get big enough to be worth buying, and then selling you the origin story as if the founder's still in the lab. Meanwhile, the brand everyone assumed was beneath consideration is privately held by a family that has spent 60 years deliberately avoiding the spotlight and putting the savings into the formula instead. Being owned by a giant was never automatically the danger here. CeraVe, under L'Oreal, is still a good cream. The danger was assuming the story on the box told you anything true about what's inside it. Your skin only ever wanted the formula. So tell me in the comments, which of these have you been quietly buying without telling anyone? And which $50 bestseller are you finally ready to stop overpaying for? I read every one. And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, finding out who's really behind the bottle and what your money's actually paying for, subscribe, because next time I'm taking this same lens to the hair care aisle and there's a Korean ingredient hiding in 3 different $40 shampoos that you can buy by itself for less than the price of a coffee. I'll see you there.